What I want to do over these next 5 weeks, today included, is really get up to speed on this, to where we get through the preliminaries like that, and then we can spend our time on delineation and starting to really look at aspects. Aspects give us so much key information. They're really the idiosyncrasies. So what I'd like to do is just sort of describe the class, and I want to start off with this morning. I had a client who came to me for the first time. And she, although it was a first-time client, she didn't want to have her natal chart read because she had had it done several times before. And she really wanted her progressions. But at the beginning of the session, I said, well, I want to just take a few minutes to touch upon key factors in your natal chart before we move on to the progressions, because the progressions relate back to the natal chart. So I spent about 15 minutes just going through the natal chart with the astrodynes, looking at dominant planet signs and houses, and looking at the harmony and discord, and giving, just basic delineation on that, not going around the wheel and using that organizationally. And then I moved into the progressions interpretation. And at the end of the session, she paid me the most wonderful compliment. She said, in just a few minutes, you gave me more information about my natal chart than I have received in the previous 3 astrology readings I've had.
Wow.
And I said, well, I'd like to accept it as a compliment for myself, but I really follow a system. And I'm trained in a particular system, and I really believe in this system. And because she was pretty much saying, you really cut to the chase on this.
Yeah.
You pegged really key things that came home for me. And I'm here teaching this because I really believe in this system, and I'm hoping in 5 weeks to produce some good astrologers, if not have all of you on the road towards having your system down to be where you'll end up getting statements like that from people, even if you're just doing it for family or friends, that you'll be able to get that type of information. That's my goal over the next 5 weeks. The way this class will be conducted is each week we will have a new chart that we're looking at. Because our class time has been shortened to an hour and a half, we're going to really pick up our pace to go through this, and we will really focus on delineation and group participation. What I'm planning to do is each week focus in on 2 different aspects so that we become more facile in our handling of language around aspects, and where we really get to see how specific aspects work. Because when you're looking at all the aspects in a reading, it can become a little overwhelming. But we'll look at the strongest aspects, the most harmonious, the most discordant in the chart, but then we'll focus in on 2 aspects. Since we have 5 weeks and 10 aspects, we can do 2 a night. That's going to be the goal. Barb.
So far, you've got Mike from the UK.
Hey, Mike Salter.
Doug from California.
Hi, Doug. I can't pronounce your last name, but
I'm back.
thank you.
And Paul from Michigan.
Hey, Paul. Welcome back.
So they're clicking on.
Okay, good. So that's my goal, and the format is 1 chart a week, but specifically focusing in on 2 aspects. I may have a few curveballs in this class, but for the most part, we're going to be looking at charts of persons that may be recognizable to you somehow in contemporary history. And at the end of the class, I'll let you know who it is, and we can go back and compare what we've discovered. Please, class, both present and online, don't approach this as a guessing game, that you want to guess who it is. Let's approach this as we want to be really good at astrological delineation. And then you can make a note on your paper who you think it is, And at the end, I'll reveal that, and you can see if you got that person or not. But the goal here is not to guess who it is, but to really just see how accurate we can become just by using planet signs, houses, and aspects. Any questions? All right. There's not going to be a whole lot of slides in this class. But from our previous class, this information is going to be familiar with you. And we're going to just each week pick up the pace in which we do this. 7 steps in analyzing. Remaining succinct and orderly, think of that, really helps us in interpretation. Now, the tendency when you look at a chart is just to want to jump to the things that grab your attention. But you're so much more helpful to the other person if you're able to work with some order. And as you know from the last class of the previous session, before we start approaching the 7 steps, we are just looking at the generalities in the chart. And that alone can provide us with themes and overall understanding of the individual. Here's the chart for tonight. And the first step we look at is, are there any retrograde planets? Why? We consider the qualities of retrograde planets to be repressed. There are the 2 retrograde planets. We have Neptune in Virgo in the 11th house, Pluto in Leo in the 9th house. Somebody make a delineation.
Of like the planet, like Pluto and Leo?
Yeah, but retrograde.
But retrograde.
How that energy might express if it's a little repressed.
Well, using key words, it would be in the Department of Life and Higher Education, Religion, Publicly Expressed Opinion, this person is probably works in groups or is affected by groups, but repressed. But held back in some way, feels somewhat hindered in working with groups or expressing their opinion about universal welfare.
All right, that was a good collection of keywords.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to use in order to stimulate something.
It was a lot like pickup sticks.
Right.
And I think you're right in some of them, and you'll see later where that comes out when I reveal who this is. Erica.
I'm thinking, okay, the 9th house, which is education, and Pluto is there, which is Pluto's kind of inversive and in coercion. So with Leo there, who is very creative, I'm thinking that this person could be using their education for more like creativity.
You may be right. All right, let's move on to the Neptune in Virgo.
But how would that? But the repression thing is what always throws me.
Well, yeah, and the way I tend to look at it is the qualities tend to come forward more later in life. That early in one's life, you have a planet there, so you can't not have experiences tied into religion and groups. But you're being succinct or successful in working with that may be something that develops really slowly. Or I'm thinking with Pluto and Leo that one of the things that can happen in working in groups, you do have to make your ego sometimes subservient to the larger group in order to function cooperatively.
Right.
So the advantage of Pluto being retrograde is that could possibly allow the person in philosophical groups or organizations or church or devotional atmosphere to be able to rein in and function with the group. That would be my delineation. What about having the utopian urges in the house of friendships, hopes, and wishes? We had something like this in a Sunday's class. I believe we talked about a chart that had Neptune in the 11th house, though I don't remember. Yeah. I don't remember much else about that class, but somehow this is ringing a bell.
Well, I'm thinking the 11th house is friends and associations. And it's also in, Virgo, which is a lot to do with work skills. So eccentricity, which is Uranus, or Neptune, which is illusions. So, and then with Virgo, I think this person might have a lot of illusions with maybe their health or maybe their work skills or maybe even attitude problem with friends and associates.
Okay, and what I would add with Virgo and Neptune when it's combined, sometimes the illusions are, we each in some way, we all have a Neptune, so we all want a better world. However, Virgo wants a perfect world.
Right.
So, the illusions, wherever Neptune falls, we have illusions. I also say wherever Neptune falls, you have disappointments. And so in this case, the disappointments, or the way she's able to handle disappointments with friends, could perhaps develop skills slowly over time. That probably early in life they may have been deep and profound, but as one ages, retrograde planets are like a nice oak cask for, fermenting wine, in a
That's
sense.
an interesting thought.
Think of it, it lends kind of a flavor over a long period of time. And I actually find retrograde planets really, although we call them repressed, they also, I think, add a level of refinement over time to that area.
It seems like a bottle of wine too, how
That makes
it's
a lot
better,
of
it's
sense.
supposed to get better in a way.
Okay, so that's just my opinion. That's not in the Brotherhood of Light lessons anywhere, so don't take that as
Well, that's
a
a
B
good
of L
thought to
teaching,
think
but that's
about.
just
Yeah.
looking at thousands of charts over 30 years that I've come to that conclusion myself, and I could be wrong. Okay, stationary planets, we've talked about this, and there are none in this chart, so don't worry yourself, but I decided to still put up a page from an ephemeris to show you the evidence. There are no stationary planets.
Okay.
Let's move on. All right, planets above the horizon, houses 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. There, we have a chart.
We're
What
not
have we got?
counting the ascendant and the midheaven.
No,
So 7 planets.
you're a good counter. Did anyone else get 7?
Yes.
All right. Some of you will be good readers, and you'll see in this chart there are 7 planets above the horizon, just in case.
If we read it,
Yeah. I am doing my best to help all of you. So, what might we guess about this person with 7 planets above the horizon?
As
They
Erica
don't-
said today, she can't get away with much.
Yeah. That explains it all. You tend towards publicity. You can't sneak around, you can't hide. Whatever you do is somehow, it's getting attention. And that means below the horizon, if you have 7 above, there's only 3 below. So, there are still some things that this person wants to be kept hidden. But for the most part, the publicity reigns in this chart. These are generalities we can just speed through. Remember, planets east are
One that's, we mold the environment.
Yes, molds the environment at cause. 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, and 3 are on the eastern hemisphere of the chart. Here we see 2 planets. Neptune in the 11th and Venus in the 3rd house. So that takes us to the next question. How many are west? 2 from 10 is 8. Here we go. We're moving along quickly, which means we'll get to spend a lot more time focusing in on the meat and bones of delineation. So 8 planets in the Western Hemisphere, and we looked at a chart also this Sunday that had a lot on the west side. And persons with a Western chart tend to be molded by their environment. And sometimes being molded in by the environment comes down to just being in the right place at the right time, having the right ideas during the right epoch or era. So that too could be part of what's happening in this woman's chart. We're calling this female number 1, since I will have, in 5 weeks, I've got 3 male charts and 2 female charts. And, yes,
I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
you didn't mean to interrupt my cough?
Oh, I thought you were about to say something when you coughed. Do you think people with a lot of planets in the west tend to, do they tend to read the environment pretty well? Or do you think that they can just also just be victims of the environment?
Well, having a West Side Story
Yeah.
myself,
Yeah, me too.
I would like to say that I read the environment well, rather
Right.
than, and I don't like to think of myself as a victim, though I have been victimized at times, and I've been in situations or environments where it certainly
didn't like
seemed
it.
like the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, I've also been at the right place at the right time. And so I think it has a lot to do with you develop a sensitivity towards reading the environment, and you learn that your ability to have some effect in life is not based on just, going boldly forth where no man has ever gone, but it's through, sort of striking when the iron is hot, being able to sense the environment and move accordingly, or by placing oneself in the environments that will support. And I think next week when we do male number 1, we'll see some of that in play also, how one can choose an environment that supports their goal.
So they're not necessarily good at manipulating the environment?
They feel more manipulated, right?
Well, I think that if people who become successful at knowing that they are at cause of the environment or in effect of the environment, if they want to be successful, I think they have to learn how to manipulate it.
Or I call it choosing the environment
Yeah.
rather than manipulating it, because I still question how much control I have over anything other than my own thought processes in life.
But if they're at effect and they're being molded by the environment, and you said last time that they can feel more manipulated. I mean, it's just like all your goals aren't working out the way somebody would throw a wrench in your idea, sort of. So you have to overcome it, like Vicky's saying. You have to figure it out and manipulate yourself in order to get ahead of it.
Right, which is through the process of selection and selecting people, places, and things which will be supportive and cooperative. And that is the way where this type of temperament functions best. There are other people who can, regardless of that support level, just plow forward and make things happen. It's much harder for this type of temperament to do that. Oftentimes you're your best laid plans are thwarted. Somebody sent me an email last week where at the bottom of it said, "We make plans and God laughs."
Awesome.
And I thought about that in regards to a West Side chart.
Yeah, right.
All right, note the power in the chart. Well, where we really get to note the power in the chart is when we look at the astrodynes. But these are steps that come out of what we've coined the term old-timey astrology. And it's really good to brush up on them because they usually give us an overall comprehension of the chart that's later verified by the astrodyne report. Keep in mind, why is power important? You can't get yourself out of the chair without it. So power is important in that the greater the volume of energy we have, the more we accomplish in life.
Christopher, on that question, this person has 514.24 power in their chart, correct?
Yes.
And I just looked at a chart of a young man who had 736. Would you say that person had more vitality than this person necessarily?
No, they have. Try to think of it almost like power plants, or maybe like Hoover Dam. And the interesting thing about the power grid is as more users are using the energy, they have to up the volume of production in the power plant. And so quite often we have power plants where each of us as being an individual dynamo or a power plant. And depending on how many appliances we're running, have you ever put on your dishwasher, your washing machine, started to iron and vacuum, if you could do that kind of multitasking, and gone out and looked at your electric meter, and it starts like, woo, and then you may turn everything off, and it's like that. So what I like to keep in mind, and this is a very circuitous path to answer you, Vega, but what I like to keep in mind is looking at each individual chart as a closed power plant. That when it comes to total volume of power, it's really hard to compare one to the other because it really depends on how many appliances you have in your house. It shows the potential of how much dynamic power you could work with. But I have seen people with incredibly powerful charts that have accomplished little due to a lack of self-direction. And I've seen people with weak charts with power, but where they have chosen to use all of it towards some tremendous goal. So we would say that the young man's chart that you looked at this week has more potential than this person. And we have yet to see, right, you can see from
potential
her age that this is somebody who's going to be 70 soon. So this is somebody who we have a lifetime to track what her accomplishments have been, and they have been many. With this young person's chart, chances are he may
don't know him that much.
Right.
Yeah. He's only got 22 years on this planet.
So, angular, succedent, cadent houses. Remember, angular houses, wide open doors, letting in the astral energy. Succedent houses are open windows. Cadent houses are solid walls. Nevertheless, if you've lived in an apartment where you shared a wall with someone, if your neighbor's playing their stereo, you can still hear it. So let's note power in this chart.
Wow,
Angular houses.
5 planets.
Mercury, Saturn, Uranus, Mars, Jupiter. Succedent houses,
2.
the Sun and the Moon.
And
and Neptune.
3.
Cadent houses, 3 and 9. There are 2 planets. So there's a fair amount of, there's energy here.
Yeah, definitely.
There is some energy going on here. All right, and then the next thing we want to know is, 1, how much energy do you have and how do you use it? The qualities are so important in determining states of being. And you can think of them as being solid, liquid, gaseous. They're just matter moving at different frequencies. So the movable signs, which are Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, are pioneers. Their energy, they're moving at a fast pace. These molecules are active. Fixed signs are the slowest, which are Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius. And mutable signs move somewhere in between. They're the middlemen. Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces. So let's look at that with this chart. What have we got? Movable signs, Aries, Cancer. 2 planets, both luminaries, so this has some effect. What could we say, having both luminaries in movable signs?
They have
Self-starter.
Yeah, they have an ability to pioneer.
Pioneer, self-starter. 4 planets and the midheaven and the ascendant are in fixed signs.
They like to finish what they start.
Venus in Aquarius, Saturn, Uranus in Taurus, and Pluto in Leo. When they do things, how do they want to do it? Well. Get it moving and do it well. And lastly, 4 planets are in mutable signs. Mercury is in Pisces, Mars and Jupiter are in Gemini, and Neptune is in Virgo. So
They're developers.
this is also somebody who is a developer. She is able to sort of move between all of those phases. Though when we look at the Astrodyne report, which really breaks it down for us, the most powerful here is the fixed at 44.7%. And the movable, which are just the 2 planets. You don't have that in your handout, so don't spend a lot of time searching for it. The movable are the weakest. So my sense is, really, she's the person to bring in to, seal the deal, to finalize things, to finish off the product. Now, triplicities, fire, earth, air, and water. These are the elements, and they impact personality. And this information is really useful in your life, especially from relationships. We tend to be more compatible with persons who share elements with us. And we have the hardest time understanding people that don't share those elements. It's the same when we choose work that we go towards. We're going to do well in a field that accesses our dominant element better than in a field that accesses our weakest element. So, besides inspiration, spew out some keywords for fire. Life. Enthusiasm. Vital. Energetic. Yes, Barb?
We lost our stream.
Oh. Well, let's look at her chart. What have we got? 2 planets plus the MC in fire. Sun in Aries, Pluto in Leo, midheaven in Leo. So there's a little fire here. This is somebody who has some enthusiasm. And curiously, 2 of them do fall in her houses of life. 5th house of love and entertainment, and the 9th house of philosophies and public expression. So where might her enthusiasms express?
Well, creatively, for sure.
Yeah. And they're trying one another.
Yeah,
But that's jumping ahead.
right. Through public, yeah, she like, through the public.
3 planets are in Earth signs. We have Saturn and Uranus here in Taurus, and Neptune in Virgo. These are also forming trines to one another. So where does her practicality take place?
Partners and friends, and
Yeah.
the social areas of life. And the
Social,
public.
her social friends are practical?
Well, and some people realize that friends can have great practical benefits. Her 3 in air signs. What have we got? Venus in Aquarius, Mars, Jupiter in Gemini. And 2 planets plus the ascendant in water signs. So this is pretty spread out if you think about it.
Yeah, well balanced.
And you want to hear the division by astrodyne power of each of the elements?
Yeah.
Fire, 22.8. Were you able to get the streaming back up, Bart?
Just
Right.
go back, and they say they're getting it.
Good, thanks for doing that. 22.8 for fire, 28.2 for earth, 24.7 for air, 24.4 for water. So earth is slightly stronger in this chart. Why do you think that is?
Saturn.
2 planets
The
in an
angular
angle.
position
Yeah.
of those earth planets. So
And they make a pretty close aspect, too.
So the thing is, this woman's probably just really down to earth. Yet, we would guess from this distribution, it's almost a full quarter in each of the elements, that this is a really well-balanced chart as far as elements go. But earth ever so slightly dominates.
To help her get things done, and, I mean, she's got these fiery dynamic ideas, and then she's got a nice disciplined Saturn in Taurus to help her bring it about in the earth plane, in reality. Maybe.
I think you're right. Though when we hear her story, we will also discover where the lack of planets in the trinity of wealth has affected her. So even though she has ever so slightly dominant earth, house positions are also important in terms of what we're able to accomplish in life. Any questions thus far on the process? Okay. I like speeding right along so we can... Where do we place our emphasis in life? This really becomes seminal when you're looking at a chart, is where someone's attention goes. And I've already given you a key. We have societies and trinities. The societies are personal, companionship, public. Personal houses, 12. 1, 2, 3.
So
How many
one
do you
planet.
count?
Just one planet.
Only one planet. What is she focused on here? Clearly not herself. Houses of companionship, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 4, 5, 6 planets. Where is her attention?
Others.
All of the others in her life. And public. Houses 8, 9, 10, and 11, there are 3 planets up there. So there's also attention here that goes towards the public. And in her chart, for some reason, this distribution is equal. The power is precisely equal. She has 35.8% of her power in companionship, 35.8% in public.
Well,
Must be the aspects.
It must be the aspects because it's not by the number of planets.
It's not
That's
by
clear.
planet.
And one would think with that seventh house, all those planets in the seventh house. So, must be the aspects. Okay. Let's keep moving. All right, the trinities: life, wealth, association, and what I like to call psychoism.
I know that department of life.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's a real word, but... So now we're looking at the chart from the perspective of trinities. When we look at the trinity of life, houses 1, 5, and 9, there are 2 planets there. Wealth, I'm perceiving a dearth of activity. Houses 2, 6, and 10, but I've already pointed that out to you. If we look at association, Venus, Saturn, Uranus, Mars, Jupiter, Neptune. There's a lot of energy in the houses of association. By astrodyne power, this has 43.8% of the power. So where is her attention? Not only is it companionship-oriented, she's interested in her social arrangements. Who else is part of her life? So we're finding out some keen things about this woman already.
Well, and interestingly, with Venus in the 3rd house, social, her personal thinking is all about social, and being in Aquarius, which is the natural ruler of the 11th.
Mm-hmm.
It's a
Friends.
Yeah.
Psychism, Mercury in Pisces, Moon in Cancer. And I wish that this was the chart I was using on the night we were looking at trines, because there is a super abundance of them in this chart. I'm going to just count them up quickly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 trines in one chart. That's not fair. But we never said life was. All right. We're getting close, Erica, to what you had a question about before, which is how do we incorporate these steps? And I'm going to read this aloud, just for my own sake, in case I've forgotten it. The following steps form the actual reading of a chart. We always begin with the ascendant, the eastern horizon, and move in a counterclockwise direction. As you go through each house, note the nature of the planetary energy transmitted through each house. What does that mean? Look at the planet in the house in simpler language. The sign occupied by the planet must also be included in this consideration. Each sign has a ruler or rulers, and this was a strong topic of discussion in the Sunday's class, which we had. Because out of classical astrology, the planet governing the house, the planet that governs the sign on the cusp of the house, were known as dispositors in classical astrology, and they were very concerned where that actually fell in the chart. It gives us so much information about the interactions that go on in our life. And as I've said before, I combine steps 5 and 6 when I'm interpreting, because it's just the easiest way for me to do that, to have a circular story where I'm only having to really talk about the house once. So, step 5, when there is more than one planet occupying a house, the planet closest to the house cusp becomes the chief ruler. All other planets, including the planet or planets governing the sign found on the house cusp, become the co-rulers. When a house is unoccupied, the planet or planets ruling the sign on the house cusp become the chief ruler of the house. Now, the aside is, and I think Vicki brought this up 2 weeks ago, is what if it's not the planet closest to the cusp that is the most powerful planet in that house? How do you deal with that? Well, chances are the strongest planet in the house absorbs most of the energy of that house. The urges of that planet express dynamically, and let's try and look at that when we get to her 7th house, which is the one house that is quite occupied in this chart. Intercepted signs, we'll talk about this again. Intercepted signs are when one whole sign is enveloped within a house. Let's say you have 25 degrees of Aries on the 2nd house cusp, and you have 3 degrees of Gemini on the 3rd house cusp. This means that all 30 degrees of Taurus are intercepted in that 2nd house. The closer you are to the equator, the less likelihood there is of an intercepted house. The closer you are to the Arctic Circle, or the Antarctic Circle, the greater likelihood you're going to have intercepted signs within a house. These qualities are latent. What I generally feel about them, they're not just latent, they're downright weak in the chart. They are qualities, and I guess latent explains that, because a latent quality is something that requires great effort to bring into expression. And so the intercepted signs, unless they really have a lot of planets in them, really tend to be those qualities of personality that may go by most unnoticed in that individual. An intercepted sign with no planet in it in your Astrodyne report will show up as the weakest sign in the chart. So we're going to go through the process now of picking this apart house by house and delineating. So I want you all to sharpen your delineation skills right now. We begin with the 1st house. What can you tell me about this house?
Unoccupied.
Unoccupied. Therefore, we go to the sign on the cusp.
Ruled by Pluto and Mars.
And why is it ruled by Pluto and Mars?
Scorpio.
Scorpio. She has Scorpio rising. Let's take a moment to talk about Scorpio rising. Throw some keywords at me.
Intensity.
I desire. Motivated by her desires.
Okay, this is somebody motivated by desire, by passion. They express with intensity. They have powerful likes and dislikes. Their best quality, we know, is their resourcefulness. So Scorpio people can get into situations that they're interested in or get out of them once they're there and they realize they don't want to be there anymore. They go into a room and they note the exit signs.
Right. Or they can be troublesome.
And the worst trait is troublesome. Well, somebody describe troublesome to me. What does that look like?
I would love for you to explain that to me.
But even if they have a lot of trouble, they're learning a lot of good lessons because they always overcome those troubles.
I think troublesomeness has to do more with if someone if they get rubbed the wrong way, they have a tendency to want to cause trouble.
Well, I actually think they do, whether they're rubbed the wrong way or not.
Oh, okay. Well, I think it's.
I always look at Scorpio as the person who stirs the pot.
They like to stir the pot. Yeah.
Manipulate the group from
Yeah.
underneath.
I compare Scorpio to a good massage therapist. What do they do?
All the
Pound
the
on
hot
you.
spots.
Exactly. A good massage therapist is the person that comes up to you and just like does this. You know, they go, and it's like, oh,
They release the toxins.
right. Theirs and yours.
Even though it hurts.
There's always a huge release that goes on when they're around. But to me, that's the troublesomeness, Vega, is Scorpio can come into a room and scan. They can pick out the hot topic, the hot subject. They can find your sore spot, your most sensitive point, and then I also compare them to big dogs like a Great Dane that comes and leans up against you and slowly exerts all of its weight on you. And Scorpio will do that. They will come and they will exert pressure until you yield. You either yield or you draw a line in the sand and you say, don't go there. So,
Oh, boundary testers. Huh?
but it's no more horrible than the best or worst qualities of any other sign. You know, the worst qualities of any sign all sound horrible to me. And I'm so ashamed of the ones I have. But,
Scorpios are also the main healers.
thank you.
Absolutely, yeah.
Likewise, I always say Scorpios are like lizards in that they can grow a new tail. So not only can the Scorpio person help you release your toxins by touching upon your most troubling subject and bringing it to the light of day, but you know, it's like getting a good chiropractic crack. It brings about an incredible release.
And they have a lot of psychism too. So if something's troubling you
Thank
inside,
you. Let's look at this. What is it? It's a water sign. So immediately the psychic, emotional, passionate ability is there. It is a fixed sign. So they're rigid or they're unyielding. Scorpios tend to be somewhat secretive. So when Scorpio's rising, I do find that individuals with Scorpio rising do not often reveal about themselves, but they are like the interrogator. You know, they're shining this light on you and asking the questions. So they
keep your
can
secret.
move,
They'll keep your secret.
they will keep your secrets, but they can move the conversation along with, and you go away wondering, who was that masked woman? Yet you've given her your social security number, your maiden name, first car you drove, and they're able to, detective-like, pull that out. So, this takes us to your question. Since we're now looking at where do these planets fall in the chart, we can see that Pluto falls in the 9th house. And will you read the statement for me, Eric?
The ninth house?
Yes, if the...
Okay. That is influenced by philosophy and foreign events.
Okay, we would say her personality is influenced by her philosophy, her religion, her experiences in foreign countries has a great impact over her personality, or the degree and level of education she has. If we look to Mars, what else has a great impact on her personality?
And that's in the 7th house.
Yes.
It's also somewhat controlled by partners in the public.
So, this is somebody who may be chameleon-like in the sense of either expressing or holding back what personality she reveals according to the judgment placed on that by the public or her companions in life. So do you see how those steps
Yeah, I
now
see it
work?
now.
Okay, we're going to do this as we go around the chart. Scorpio rising, they are the great healers. And I've never thought about this woman in this way, but when we talk about who it is, we might see in the way in which she's been a great healer. But they can get down, you know, they're like colon hydrotherapist. They get down into your deep, dark spots and flesh them out.
Let's not pursue that one.
Okay. Second house, also unoccupied, Sagittarius on the cusp. Give me some attitudes of Sagittarius towards money.
Oh.
Cavalier.
Cavalier, I call it happy-go-lucky.
Mhm.
All right.
It's a fire sign, so it's gonna burn a hole in your pocket.
And have a great time doing it. And will treat everyone else at the bar, sort of thing.
Overspend.
So the ruler falls in the 7th house. We already know from what Erica has read is that her finances are somewhat controlled by partners in the public. This may be somebody who's not in control of her own money.
But fortunately, she has a generous partner in public. Well, I haven't looked at the aspects, but.
Yeah. Okay. Would say she has the possibility
The
for a
possibility
generous
for a
partner.
generous- Okay.
Public,
Well,
I'd
it
say
is
yes.
in
The
the house
public
of
has
the
been
fall.
very generous to
Right.
this woman, but
Yeah.
not sure about partners.
Well, okay, so, and the reason you might say that is because Jupiter is in the house of its fall, right?
The sign of its
I mean,
fall.
the sign of
Yeah.
its fall. And.
It's opposite its home in
And it
Gemini.
squares Mercury. So it doesn't make, I don't know how many aspects, it doesn't make very many aspects, it looks like.
Yeah, we'll talk about it though, because it's key to understanding
Okay.
this woman. Now, can a Jupiter-ruled 2nd house have a lot of money?
I would think so.
Yeah. But how do we measure wealth?
What you keep?
Yeah. We measure wealth by how much of what you make you're able to hold on to.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas a Jupiter-ruled 2nd house, what does it do?
Gives it away.
It makes it, and it gives it away.
All right.
Very generous, it can be very generous.
Absolutely. 3rd house, we have a planet there, Venus. Social urges in the house that has to do with brothers and sisters, neighbors, mental pursuits. What could we say? There's love there.
Yeah.
It's in Aquarius, which I believe is the harmony for the sign of Venus. So Venus in Aquarius tends to get along with all types of people. They're just basically friendly. The sign ruling the cusp is Capricorn. The ruler is Saturn. Subject to control by partners in public. So even her thoughts can be influenced by her companions. Since we only have 35 minutes, I'm going to speed up the process a bit so we get through it all. Mercury, Pisces. Not a good place for Mercury. So I believe in the sign of its detriment.
Right? Yeah.
So yeah, Jupiter's in the sign of its detriment. Mercury's in the sign of its detriment.
Maybe confused thinking, somewhat confused muddled.
I actually see it as Mercury in Pisces as worry or anxiety.
Oh, worry.
Yeah, the worst trait of Pisces is worry, and
Yeah.
Mercury's worst trait is nervousness.
Yeah.
You combine the two, and
It's a
there can
mess.
be no end to the things you fuss about.
All right.
And this is tied in, however, with the home environment.
Don't be your kid.
That or there could be issues related to the father. There are 2 other rulers of the 4th house, both which fall here in the 7th house. Home influenced by partners in the public. Sun in Aries in the 5th house.
She's a gambler.
Speculator.
Gambler, speculator. Could this be an entertainer or performer?
Yeah, absolutely.
Somebody who likes to be in the spotlight or on stage. Certainly has creativity at any rate. So, loads of creativity. The sun's in Aries. How's that for your sun? Sign of its
It's a great
exaltation.
place for it,
Yeah.
Right?
Why? You have energy. You have abundant energy, vitality, and it's in the house, which has to do with, love making and entertaining. How fun is she?
Lots of fun.
Yeah, I would imagine she's lots of fun. So, would we accept an invitation to a party at her house? Probably.
Yeah.
The
It wouldn't know what time to get there. She wouldn't remember.
could be. All right, co-ruler, Pisces. 2 more planets rule the 5th house. Well, what about a Neptune-ruled 5th house? Illegitimacy of children.
Illegitimacy?
Interesting.
Or secrecy gets around children when Neptune rules the 5th house. One can have babies out of wedlock.
Wow. I didn't know that.
So Neptune would cause illegitimacy?
Yes, which is less of a big deal now than it used to be. You know, certainly in my day and age, and in all of the days and ages prior to me, it was a big deal. Now it's sort of de rigueur, but you know, yeah, Neptune brings vague circumstances around children.
Or illusion or something.
And Jupiter
Again.
brings in goodwill towards children, goodwill, generosity. I do find the person with the sun in the 5th house, however, is not only a great performer, but if they're not a great performer, they tend to become stage moms. They're the one that can be,
That little girl out there.
yeah, you're going to take ballet, or you're going to be in the acting class, or, you know, you will be doing soccer. So, because the self-esteem becomes tied up with one's offspring. If I didn't have a chance to do it, you'll have that opportunity.
Would they be good entertainers? I mean, wouldn't you think?
The children or the mom?
Well, no, with the mom, with the son in the 5th house, they would be.
Well, yeah, I'd think so. Because they certainly could tell a
Pleasures are-
story
yeah, pleasures
and
would
hold
be-
your attention.
Yeah, having fun would be an important thing.
Aries ruled 6th house.
Expresses the reasons.
Expresses through Mars. Oh, subservient to, or controlled by, or influenced by, whatever word you want to use, public and the partners. Other people have an impact over her work. That might mean wanting to work in collaboration, or sometimes people end up working with their spouses. You know, they end up in the same business together. So that can certainly happen. Whew, it's going to be hard to interpret this. But Saturn is the strongest planet in the chart. It's also the chief ruler of the 7th house. Saturn, Uranus, Mars, Jupiter. So we have safety urges, individualistic urges, we have aggressive urges and religious urges, all tied into one's relationships. Would we say that marriage is important to this woman? More than likely.
Right.
This
She may
is
not
her.
like it, but
She may not like it, but
it's a big deal.
what I say, when you have a dominant, discordant 7th house, you can't live with them and you can't live without them.
Minus 20.
You're just drawn. You have no choice.
Right.
It's your life's work. Well, with Saturn being the ruler, maybe an older partner, you know.
Yeah, that could be being drawn to older men or trying to find stability in partnership. Saturn does that. Uranus likes kooks. I interpret Uranus in the 7th house as somebody who's looking for a genius for a spouse. Mars there, you like to bicker and fight. Jupiter there, you can be more than generous with, or you may attract generosity from. And then we have Taurus on the cusp, which gives us one more ruler, falling in the 3rd house. She's also going to think about love and partnerships a lot. Does she like the public? Well, she's compelled to the public. Whether she likes them or not is another story, because it is discordant. But again, dominant seventh house compels you into interacting with others. As I always say, I love humanity. It's people I can't stand. And that's a dominant, discordant seventh house.
And that's if a person has a lot of comfortable houses, because I do, and I really don't like the way people are. You know, the basic down. You know, even though I'm public, I'm kind of like inverted on it. I guess then I like to see like it could be a better world, but why doesn't anybody want to do it?
Well, keep asking that question, because I haven't gotten an answer yet.
That's probably
But it can be a better world. But, you know, it does require everyone getting on that agenda.
Yeah.
Or at least 51%.
It's okay.
All right. Let's look to the 8th house. Other people's money. The moon in Cancer in the 8th house. Wherever the moon falls, we have fluctuation. What about psychic ability in the 8th house? The 8th house is one of the houses of psychism.
Yeah, and it's a water sign, and it's the moon, so probably very in tune with
The ancestral spirit somehow. Family members from the great beyond may, you know, work with her in some ways, and because of this trine, also impress ideas upon her.
And she's got a good mind with that trine there, right?
Yeah.
Really good mind, yeah. Sorry.
Pluto, Leo, 9th house. We've talked about this a bit when we looked at the first house, and when we looked at retrograde planets. But here we have somebody whose philosophies may not become completely shaped into later life. If you think about it, wherever Pluto falls in your chart, you are subject to some compulsion or coercion. So for her, what might that area be?
Religion.
In the area of religion.
Or probably
Her philosophy,
What's that?
or her personal philosophy of how she expressed it.
It could be that, but my guess is that one's personal philosophies, for most, some have it at an early age, but for most, they're developed over time in their life. And my guess here is that there may have been religious compulsion as a child.
Because it's retrograde, or is that?
That's the nature of Pluto. Wherever Pluto falls, you're expected to conform.
Yes, I
But
know.
look at that close trine it makes to the sun down there in the 5th house. It's a very pleasant compound for her. I mean, I would think she'd get pleasure from whatever her compulsions were.
Yeah, I imagine she does. Religion or entertainment
Right.
brings great self-satisfaction.
Right.
And what could happen, I think that's good pointing that out, is religion could also bring her attention
Uh-huh.
somehow.
Yeah.
And the sun also rules the 10th house, career, honor, reputation. Matters of career are subservient to children, creativity, and speculation.
She's a risk taker.
Neptune in Virgo. Disappointed by friends, having high expectations of friends that sometimes fall through. What type of friends might she have?
Visionary, idealistic.
And she could have very humanitarian friends,
Yeah.
That you can't count on.
but that you can't count on. They may have been passed out that day. Oh, sorry, the alarm went off and I just forgot to come pick you up to go to the airport. Libra, governing the 12th house. Venus rules the 12th house. That can actually bring, when Venus rules the 12th house, there can be secret sorrows about love. Certainly Venus in the 12th house can stimulate clandestine affairs. Here, it might create some secrecy about love.
Could it also soften the effect of any secret sorrows or disappointments?
It could, especially since she does fall in the sign of her harmony, being in Aquarius. And in the 3rd house, one would process it mentally to come to terms with that. All right, we've just gone through it and in a very quick way. Normally I would spend more time on this process with a client, but in a very quick way, we've touched on the keywords. Primarily my goal here was to get you to see planets in signs and in houses and how they function, and planets ruling the cusp of houses and how when they fall somewhere, that creates an interrelationship in the chart. Now, step number 7 is note the prominence of each planet and number of aspects received by it. Well, we could spend another 2 or 3 hours tonight doing that. So, what I would like to do is go through at this point and note the strongest planet sign and house, the most harmonious planet sign and house, and the most discordant planet sign and house, and talk about those briefly. And then we're going to look at some aspects. Female number 1. All right, the strongest planet in this case is not really a planet. It is an angle, the ascendant. But the way I describe a dominant ascendant in a chart is somebody who lives through form. Basically, this is somebody who really just seeks to express themselves through their body. They're identified with their body. It's the thing they know is real, is their physicality. Second in strength in her chart is the planet Saturn.
I have different.
Yeah.
Then you have.
No, they're sorted differently.
Oh, yes,
Aren't
you're
they?
right, you're right.
Yeah, they're just sorted. These are,
You're right.
on here, they're
They
sorted
are.
by
Got it.
the,
Okay.
yeah.
I see.
They're out of order.
I apologize for that.
That's all
I
right.
will,
You have to look at, you'll have to look up here to follow
Yeah.
it.
yeah, follow the bouncing ball. Saturn, second in strength, 10.4%. Those two are pretty equivalent, and look at their relationship to one another.
Opposition.
Do you think she might have health problems?
Yes.
Yeah. Especially as old age encroaches, which Saturn governs that period in our life. But talk to me about a dominant Saturn. System, organization, planning, safety.
Safety, your primary concern.
And then the worst traits can be fear, selfishness, greed. The challenge, and then the challenge with this, with Saturn so strong in the 7th house, opposing the ascendant, is what happens. This person gives, puts out to other people, and then will become paralyzed with, what's in this for me? What am I getting from this? And
Will
that,
I get anything from this?
will I get anything from this?
Yeah.
And curiously, the third most powerful planet in this chart is Neptune, which receives an opposition from the Sun, a trine from Saturn,
And
a trine
Uranus.
to Uranus, a sextile to Pluto, and a semi-square to the ascendant. And we already said the opposition to the Sun. So Pluto What about a Sun-Neptune opposition?
They don't know themselves very well, I would think.
That is a really hard aspect, the Sun-Neptune opposition. So you've got the negative expression would be pride and illusion. One could have disproportionate sense of their importance.
Can you explain that a little bit for me, please?
Yes. Some people that I've known with this aspect are what we call megalomaniacs, where they estimate their influence in the world as being actually greater than it is.
Oh, okay, all right.
And I'm not saying that this is true about this woman. It's not actually somebody I don't know, other than publicly, as a public figure. Though it is interesting, we'll talk about this a little bit later when we discuss who it is. So that's a tough aspect, but Neptune's very strong. What is the Neptune person like? Are they anything like the Saturn person? No.
The opposite.
Yeah. Neptune's dreamy, imaginative, dramatic, expressive, charismatic. The thing about this aspect is that it makes for a very charismatic person. Even though it's an opposition, they are somebody who can hold sway over others. Now, if we look at the harmony among the planets, and that's going to be the largest number in the right-hand column without a minus in front of it, I am seeing the moon as being the most harmonious. So where would her harmony come from?
Other people's money?
Either other people's money, inheritances, legacies, gifts, grants, matters of credit. The moon can be domesticity, home, nurturing, it's in Cancer, or through the assistance one might receive from the spirit world or family members who have passed on. The greatest discord among the planets looks like the midheaven. Hard to imagine, but not entirely when we talk about who this is. This is what happens with the dominant discordant midheaven.
You would be more infamous.
You're right, you can be infamous, you can have problems with reputation. Do you get the respect that you want?
No.
No.
Especially that Leo.
It's hard to, if it's discordant, it can sometimes be hard to get the respect, the adulation that you want. So I'd say there's some concerns there. What about the relationship with authority figures or the mother?
Not too good.
All right. Houses. Dominant house. All right. There's no surprise here. The 7th house is the most powerful house. 25.3% of her energy. So 1/4 of all of this woman's power expresses through 1/12 of her chart. She's concerned about her relationships. The 11th house is next in strength with that dominant Neptune. What else is important to her? Her friends.
Yeah.
And then the 4th house, home and family. The harmony comes in through the 8th house. Again, the spirit world, other people's resources. This would say if this woman listens to her intuitions, she can probably sail through life. When she ignores them, she probably gets in trouble. And the most discordant house, again, it's not uncommon. If the midheaven's most discordant, then, and the house is unoccupied, the 10th house will be as well. The strongest sign, Taurus, and that comes from this conjunction of Saturn and Uranus in an angular house.
And that really close trine to Neptune.
So, dominant Taurus person, give me some keys. I have. Down to earth, practical, sensual, musical. These are all, voice is important to Taurus people. They love to sing. Next in strength is Gemini. I think. Mental, expressive. And then Leo, I will. Well, what do we know about willpower and a West Side chart?
Gotta be able to manipulate your.
Yes. We make plans and God laughs. The harmony in her chart comes in through the sign of Cancer, where the moon is at its home in the 8th house. You know, when she's cooking and caring for those around her, life is good. The discord here comes in through Leo, or actually no, through Taurus. So there could also be problems, I'd think, with the region of the neck or throat or thyroid with that going on there. All right, let's look at her aspects. And we're running out of time here. But I'm seeing a very powerful parallel of the Sun to Neptune. Not only are they opposite, but they are parallel to one another. So there's an intensity compound between the power urges and the utopian urges.
Nothing that strong Uranus.
The greatest harmony here, let's take a gander. Certainly found the greatest discord with no problem. Or did I? Yep. Greatest harmony I see is the trine from Uranus to Neptune.
Uranus to Neptune?
Does everyone see that?
Yeah.
Uranus trine Neptune 9.09.
Well, there's an
Mercury
ascendant
to your
Mercury.
ascendant, wouldn't that be?
But it's close, yeah. Mercury ascendant is a little higher than that.
Oh yes, 933. Thank you for pointing that out.
But both of them are pretty darn good.
Well, what about Mercury trining the ascendant? Luck through self-expression.
Yeah.
Your voice is heard. And the greatest discord? Would that be Mercury square Mars? Slightly higher than the Saturn square the midheaven.
Yeah. 1258.
Yeah, so let's, we have the aggressive urges and the intellectual urges in an obstacle compound. You
Her
can say
speech.
things you regret.
Yeah. Might be caustic in her speech sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Hasty.
Yeah. And then the Saturn midheaven square, there can be some loss of the mother. Or obstacles through authority figures, people putting you down or putting you in your place.
Well, would she, is that Saturn in midheaven? Is that what would she suffer, would her reputation suffer as a result of her partnership? Saturn
Probably, yeah. You could end up
So-
with somebody that nobody else likes.
Yeah. Because that's a pretty close square.
Or not be able to hold a partner and have others criticize you for that.
Yeah.
Or the partner, puts obstacles so you can't achieve your
So the
Right,
partner
a
is
partner
the
might
opposite.
require care. It could be if you marry someone older than you, you
Yeah.
could be home pushing a wheelchair rather
Yeah.
than,
Yeah.
out at the casino where you might rather want to be
Yeah, that sun there.
with the sun in the 5th house. All right. I don't know how I'm going to squeeze all of this into the next 9 minutes, but I wanted to focus tonight on aspects and really explore conjunctions, but I think we're just going to pick out one tonight and talk about it. Conjunction is neutral, except when Jupiter and Venus are involved or Mars and Saturn. It is powerful. Wherever you have conjunctions in your chart, this is an area of your life that stands out. And she has 2 conjunctions, curiously enough.
Yeah, Saturn, Uranus, and Mars, Jupiter.
Yep, there they are. So let's make up some combo plates here. Safety urges and individualistic urges in a prominence compound in one's companionships. Sounds a little psychotic to me.
Yeah, it's like hard to even think of what to say.
Sounds like an engineer to me.
Okay. We might say you would do well marrying an engineer. Sounds like a fortune cookie advice.
Electrical engineering.
Right. Partnerships can both be limiting and or inspirational. She may want safety, which usually for most people, oh baby, tell me you're going to love me for the rest of my life.
Right.
But Uranus can bring in, well, it was nice knowing you, so long.
All right. But Uranus brings originality, and you have to think out as someone who can think outside the box. But in order to make what you think of outside the box reality, you have to apply system and order. And I mean, I can see where that could actually be a good complement.
Mm-hmm. And we've got the aggressive urges and the religious urges together. I actually see Mars and Jupiter as a good combination in a chart. Because generally what happens is Jupiter has more harmony than Mars has discord, and one will work on the behalf of others. One will do charitable works. So she could also really effort in partnership and express goodwill in partnership. But these are 2 conjunctions, 2 prominence aspects. I'm going to move on quickly because the other aspect of equal strength in a chart is the opposition. It is a separation compound whenever there are 2 planets pulling on one another in opposite directions. It tends to be both attractive and antagonistic. Ultimately, with an opposition, you have to choose. And it's not even really a conscious choice. You end up siding with the more powerful planet in the opposition. She has 4 in her chart. Has this woman had an easy life? No, it's been about a lot of choices that have to be made. Of course, 2 of these oppositions involve the ascendant because of the conjunction of Saturn and Uranus in the 7th house oppose the ascendant. So again, that's back to can't live with them, can't live without them. Partnerships, the natural energy is to push into partnerships in this chart, but it then pulls on the self, and there becomes some degree of self-sacrifice. When all of the energy is in companionship, it's hard for a person to remember to take care of themselves. Why? They're too darn busy taking care of everyone else. The other oppositions are the Sun to Neptune opposition and the Venus to the midheaven opposition. We've already talked about the Sun-Neptune opposition, so let's talk about Venus midheaven opposition. Social, beauty, creativity, career, honor, reputation.
She gets bad publicity for her social urges, for the expression of her social urges.
That's interesting. One anecdote I'll tell may...
But she also likes to look good in her career.
Fabulous gowns. I actually find oppositions to the midheaven to be very dynamic. Although they are stressful, those qualities tend to be pulled up into expression in the chart, at least in the charts that I've studied and observed. She's a
Oh,
queen.
this is Aretha.
Re. Just a little
Yeah.
bit.
Oh,
E-C-T.
I was
Tell you
thinking
what it
Joan
means
Crawford.
to me.
oh, great though.
Respect.
I went to see her in Vegas.
All right. How was it?
It was awesome, although she's
Is
very
she
sick, so it's very.
a performer?
Yep, she's a performer, all right.
Is she compelling and
Always.
enchanting?
Always.
And she's a queen.
And she's a queen.
But she also has health problems.
Well, so what, okay, so what, I don't know anything about her partnerships
Oh, she's had a slew of bad ones.
Yeah.
Oh, she has?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think they kind of walk in and out of her life.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think Christopher got that one right.
American singer of gospel, soul, rhythm, and blues. By 1994, she held 2 world records, winning more Grammys, 15, than any other female performer in any category, and topping the charts with 17 top 10 singles.
So that's quite a bit where it came in the 9th house, Pluto and Leo. Her gospel singing and
Thank you. That is where she started. And although it may have been compulsion, forced to do that by her father, a minister,
Uh-huh.
what happened? She got recognition through that. Her mother, Barbara Franklin, was a pianist and choir mistress. Her father, C.L. Franklin, was a powerful black minister. She grew up in Detroit, and she was actually the favorite of her father's children.
Because she could sing.
All right. Saturn, square, midheaven.
Wow.
Mother leaves home in 1952. She's 10 years old. And she dies. 1948. She left home when she was 6 years old. So she was raised by her grandma. So, age 14, she makes her first gospel recording, tours the South as the featured member of the New Bethel Choir. Sun opposing Neptune. Unwed mother at age 14. She gave birth to 2 sons by 2 different fathers, who she did not marry, and she's never identified them. Again, Sun opposing Neptune. However, she's never played the role of the wounded woman. Her songs have always been very powerful. What do we have here? 1963, she brought down the house at Chicago concert that also featured Martin Luther King, Mahalia Jackson, and Dinah Washington. Signed with Columbia Records in 1960. In 61, she married Ted White. They divorced 8 years later. In 1967, I Never Loved a Man made her a superstar. And in 68, the song we all remember, Respect. And then in 78, she married actor Glenn Thurman.
God,
I mean, already, how many partners has she had?
Well, there's 4 we know of,
Wow.
just because she has 3 children, and she married 2 men. Yeah, you can see how her father would have given her anxiety.
Yeah.
Burglarized, shot in his home, remained in a coma. She actually moved to go back home and take care of her father.
Wow. A long time.
But also, real estate issues. Uranus can bring sudden loss. Uranus conjunct Saturn, both rulers of the 4th house. So she lost a $1.4 million house in a Detroit fire.
Well, when you say lost it, does that mean she didn't have insurance?
You know, that was the research I did. That those were the.
I know. I'm just going. Oh. Where did you go?
I mean,
Yeah, where did it go? I put it down and I can't find it.
It's interesting, she's suffering from pancreatic cancer. She was very, very sick when I saw her in Las Vegas, and she said that she couldn't balance her diabetes. That was the reason she was so sick, was that she couldn't get her sugar under control.
Yeah, obviously there's an issue with the pancreas. So
I didn't realize it. I knew that she got sick, but I didn't know that she had pancreatic cancer. Oh wow, she's not long for the world, then, is she?
well, I'll send her some love because she could be here as long or as short
She chooses.
as she chooses.
Wow.
There's a new surgery for pancreatic cancer. It's pretty exciting.
That's good.
So, any thoughts on this chart?
Well, I was baffled by it the entire time.
Good. But can you see now where
Right.
the disruptiveness in partnership, the secrecy or illegitimacy of children, the great performing being first compulsion
Right.
through childhood religion.
Right. But it also, because there's a lot of vagueness associated with her too, and I think everybody knows Aretha,
Mhm.
but I don't think they know a whole lot about Aretha. Do they?
Why would that be?
Yeah, exactly.
She's
right.
not talking to the publicist.
Right. Yeah.
Because Mercury and Pisces are in the 4th house, and her mother died when she was at a young age. Does that mean that she thought a lot about, because she didn't know the
Okay,
mother?
the co-ruler of the House of Death is in the 4th house of family loss. So,
But she still thinks, she still hasn't got over it.
yeah, that certainly could be. And of course, how is one shaped when their mother abandons them and then dies?
Yeah.
Oh.
And where the reason for leaving was because of her father's philandering. She just wasn't going to take it anymore. And who knows? There may have been any number of other issues going on with the mom. But still, I think that becomes a core event that shapes you.
do you give the moon to the mother and the sun to the father?
Yes.
Okay.
So again, moon in the 8th house, we might also, though we assign 4th house to father and 10th house to mother, so in this chart, aspects to the sun can also influence the mother. But generally, the moon represents relationships with the female sex in general, and maternal influences, and the sun, the male sex, and paternal influences. So, we're 5 minutes over schedule. We'll try and speed up next week's class a little bit more. It's a lot of information to cover in one class, but Feedback, do any of you feel more skilled even thus far in
I don't.
interpreting?
I
Okay.
feel a little more challenged, which I think is good.
Okay.
Yeah, I regard that as good.
Great, and I think I'm going to bring up some challenging charts
Yeah.
over the next few weeks.
This was a really excellent one, thank you.
Yeah,
She's
I
been
love
one of my
Aretha.
faves
Oh, me
forever,
too.
so.
Yeah.
Since
Awesome.
1968.
Yes, when I first heard her.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, and I wanted to use her too because she has been in the news because of poor health. So, she's been such a although she was molded by the environment, her art molded the rest of us.
Yeah, no, it's interesting.
Beautiful.
And her gaudiness.
Her
Yeah,
gowns.
Oh, thank you. That takes me back to the thing about reputation and Venus opposing the ascendant. She was actually kicked off the Ed Sullivan show back in the 60s
Yeah,
because she was showing too much cleavage.
there you go.
Well, how could she not?
Yeah,
Right,
exactly.
exactly. It's like, whoa, what? I mean, that's what
Yeah,
she
right.
is.
So
That
how is
moon in Cancer,
how is that
I
for
endowed her abundantly.
a disappointment?
Yeah.
Do you think she was molded by the environment a lot too, by her father's ministry?
Oh yeah, I mean that alone shaped her because she
Yeah.
toured with him and their choir through the South. That is where she got her earliest musical opportunities, being the favored child, if one could even say
And
that.
she could probably sing in the choir a lot.
Mhm, she did. And that again is also Pluto in the 9th house. The choir is the group.
Fascinating.
Yeah, fascinating chart. Thank you all. See you next Tuesday.
Thank you.
Yes, Barb.
Sunday.
Goodbye to everyone. See you next Tuesday. 4 more weeks of incredible charts coming up, so be here.